Welcome, Renee Woods.
I don't trip over my wires here. Thank you, Tanya, and it's thanks for having me. It's really great to be here because my favorite subject in the whole world right now is ADHD. I will tell you first off why I have such a passion for ADHD. And that is because I didn't know that I had it until I was a mother of 5 children under 7 years old and had a little boy that couldn't sit still at school and couldn't pay attention. And he went through quite a few testing and was told I was a yuppie mother and he couldn't live up to my expectations. Finally, after a couple of years, we finally got the diagnosis of ADHD. And of course, I went to work reading everything I could get my hands on because back then, they really didn't know very much about it in the schools. And as I was reading, I went, oh my gosh, that's what's been wrong with me all these years. And then I found a couple of my report cards and it said, great student, can't get her work in on time. You know, good kid, daydreams in class. And so thus began our journey with ADHD in our home. And then we had a couple other kids with ADHD. So I've known since he was young that I wanted to be an ADHD coach and help people understand, because for a long time I thought I was broken, and constantly the underpinning of everything I did was, what's wrong with me? You know, when you're late and can't find things and can't get started on a project and procrastinate and all of the things that people with ADHD experience, and you're an intelligent adult and you keep going, what is the matter with me? And so when I finally realized, and that's one of my most important messages to all of us today, is that ADHD is an equipment problem, not a character flaw. You don't have a little kid that doesn't care about his grades. You don't have somebody that's just an airhead. There is a brain wiring involved. So let's get started and learn about this. The debate is over, and the truth about ADHD is clear. Mainstream medical, psychological, and educational organizations have concluded that ADHD is a real brain-based medical disorder and that children and adults benefit from appropriate treatment. It is a brain wiring. There are lots of myths out there about ADHD. You may have adopted some of them yourself. One of the myths is that ADHD is not a real disorder. It's just a bunch of little kids that can't pay attention. It is a real disorder. I'm here to tell you that. ADHD is a disorder of childhood. Well, hello, that's not true. ADHD is overdiagnosed. Is it sometimes overdiagnosed? Yes, but in general, not. And when you believe this, then you don't even want it, you just go, oh, that's just overdiagnosed. Children with ADHD are over-medicated. That is not generally true. Is it true sometimes? Yes. But that is such a stigma. You say ADHD and they go, oh, I know, this little kid just sat on the couch in a trance. Well, that's not always the case. Poor parenting causes ADHD. That is not true. It can exacerbate it. It can cause a lot of anxiety and brain shutdown in a child when a parent is stressed and is aggressive in their parenting, but it does not cause it. Minority children are overdiagnosed with ADHD and are overmedicated. Girls have lower rates and less severe ADHD than boys. That is not necessarily true, but however, little girls often slip through the cracks because they're not as rowdy and bouncing off the walls in the classroom. And research is showing that a lot of times the female population has what they call the inattentive presentation without the hyperactivity. And so a lot of women have gone undiagnosed with ADHD. What is ADHD? It stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. ADHD is a complex neurobiological condition and is highly hereditary. It is basically an understimulated frontal lobe of your brain, and it is an underproduction of the neurotransmitters that cause that brain to be stimulated. As you know, our brains work basically on electricity, and those neurotransmitters are what transmit those messages to the synapses in the neuron cells. And ADHD is an understimulated frontal lobe, usually. I mean, not usually, it is. What ADHD is not, it's not a disease, and it's not a mental illness. There are 3 presentations of ADHD. Predominantly inattentive presentation, previously known as ADD, showing up as challenges with attention and concentration. Predominantly hyperactive and impulsive, showing up as challenges with hyperactivity and impulsivity. And then your combined presentation, which involves challenges of both inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and impulsivity. In adults, the hyperactivity will be a restlessness, not ever being able to sit still, always feeling like you have to be doing something. You have racing thoughts. Instead of your body racing around, your brain starts racing around. That's how hyperactivity will show up in adults. And in little children, of course, they move a lot anyway, so hyperactivity in children often is just the movement, not being able to sit still. Any questions about that? We'll answer questions at the end. Conditions that often coexist with ADHD. This is why it is so important to go to the trouble to get an accurate diagnosis, because there are often other conditions that mirror or are similar, and you often can have both, but you want to be able to take care of each the way it needs to be taken care of. Now, anxiety sometimes will manifest in a person because of ADHD, because when you know that you're getting half the information you should, when you can't get your projects done, all the things that ADHD people experience, your anxiety shoots up through the roof. And when you finally either get the right medication and the combination treatment, your anxiety comes down, because now your brain has what it needs to do its job, and you can calm down and do your job. And depression is the same. That doesn't mean that you can't have an anxiety disorder and ADHD, but you need to know if it is an anxiety disorder or not. Where's my water? And depression is the same way. You can become very despondent and discouraged over time with dealing with the challenges of ADHD, especially if you know nothing about it and you keep asking, what's wrong with me? Learning disabilities, obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a way to keep control in your life. You can feel really out of control with ADHD. And you can see the rest: oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder. Now, dependency on addictions, alcohol, and drugs. This is an important piece because of the understimulated, brain, ADHD is such a challenge of interest. It has to be interesting, because the stronger the emotion and thought, the stronger the electrical stimulation in your brain. And so many people with ADHD start to self-medicate. They need the hit. They need that hit of dopamine. They need to feel like their brain is alive some way, somehow. So they get involved often with alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, shopping, the addictions, because it at least gives them a stimulating feeling for a time. Sleeping disorders and tics. A lot of people with ADHD have a very hard time sleeping. Going to sleep, when it gets quiet, their brain is twice as noisy. It's now it's really racing around, and they have a hard time quieting down their brain to be able to go to sleep. How widely spread is ADHD? This is pretty self-explanatory. This showed up in in the American Journal of Psychiatry in 2007. This research did. Pure facts about ADHD: both adults and children have challenges. Between 5 to 8% of school-aged children and between 2 to 4% of adults have been diagnosed with ADHD. But this is an interesting piece. 85% of adults with ADHD are undiagnosed and would qualify for treatment. That's a pretty high percentage. So Judy.
How is it diagnosed, or is that something that
Yeah, we're coming right up on it. You bet.
I have a question for you too. What do you mean when you say qualify for treatment? Do you mean that it's reimbursed reimbursable by insurance or?
Well, that you would actually be given a diagnosis. Yeah, another one. Yeah, that you would actually have all of that you have full-blown ADHD and would receive an official diagnosis. What is your perception about ADHD? It's interesting. If we had time, I'd have you turn to your neighbor and talk for a minute about what you've been told or what your ideas and thoughts are about ADHD. Well, this is what I really want you to leave with today, one of the most important things. And that is that there are a great number of gifts and talents that go with ADHD. This is one of my favorite parts of being a coach. Often, with all of the history and the negativity from teachers and parents to people that have been struggling with these challenges, they truly lose their essence of who they are. They lose themselves. They think they're irresponsible, lazy, crazy, dingy, loser, a number of, you just name it. I often show this to a client or to a teenager, and he just says, "You're kidding, that's me?" And I said, "Absolutely." And so there's a lot of wonderful ways to help them re-identify the essence of who they are. And we all have these qualities, but these are truly, you will generally find ADHD people are passionate, they're empathetic, they're almost always have a gregarious part of their personality, they're very intuitive, because they've had to pick up information in a lot different way than just remembering facts. So they have learned to really be intuitive. That's how they gather information out of their environment. ADHD diagnosis. Where do you go to find out? It is possible to get an assessment or diagnosis from a physician, a psychiatrist, pediatrician, neurologist, psychologist, nurse practitioner, clinical social worker. What I want to encourage you to do if you're seeking a diagnosis for you or a loved one, don't just go to your general practitioner and have, and give him a few characteristics of you or your loved one, and he goes, "Yeah, let's give you this little inventory. Yeah, that sounds like ADHD. Let me write you a prescription." That's when you do get overdiagnosed and overmedicated, because you need to be able to, and I'll go to the next slide. Well, I'll come back to that one in a minute. There needs to be a physical. You need to know that there's no physical reasons for these behaviors. You need to do a lot of interviewing of not only the person or child themselves, but the people that live with them. Because there has to be functional impairment in more than one or two areas of your life for it to really qualify as ADHD. And these are some of the areas: academic, behavioral, performance at school, family relations and stress. Relationships are really hard with people, often with children, especially in people with ADHD. Completing routines and chores, social relationships, success in extracurricular activities. They're hot-headed. They don't have very good emotional regulation, and so they often, because of their competitive nature, just get in trouble and with the refs and coaches and everybody else, and so they have a hard time there being successful often. Risk behaviors, they'll take great risks because, again, it gives them that hit of dopamine. Mood regulation, frustration, and tolerance. And we'll talk about more of some of the symptoms and the behavioral things. But that's why you need to really be interviewing. You need to have a medical developmental history. And I'll go back to this other evaluation. These are two recognized and respected clinical ways to evaluate.
Manuals?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, and this DSM-5, it's actually an inventory.
Right.
Yeah, that you can give people. And then this World Health Organization is similar, but it is used easier around the country, around the world, in different countries. These are some of the pillar identification behaviors that you'll see: hyperactivity, disorganization, distractedness, inattention, forgetfulness, disinhibition. We'll talk a little bit more about those. That's just a nice visual. Where does ADHD show up? In order to get an ADHD diagnosis, like I said, it needs to show up significant problems in at least 2 of these settings. I love these pictures. They're pretty telling. You know, right here, like I said, this kid's arguing with the ref. He just knows he's right, and he's going to argue till he is, you know, he's going to argue till he dies practically. This mom's had it with these kids that are fighting, and I love the one down here in the corner. When you have piles and not files, you know there just might be a hint that you have ADHD. You'll find that ADHD people have piles everywhere. So another great visual. Where and how might it show up in children? School, missing, or late assignments. Often it's so exasperating. You'll have a kid that'll do the assignment and just not turn it in. Just forget to turn it in. Or not do the assignment, or put it off too late and turn it in late. Retaining and recalling information. They're a little bit slower processors, and you can understand why. Feelings of overwhelm. ADHD brain wiring gets overwhelmed really easy. You put 3 or 4 papers on a kid's desk and their little brain starts to shut down because they don't organize or prioritize very well. So they don't know, all of a sudden they don't know where to start. Interacting with peers, transitions, mental flexibility is difficult for an ADHD brain wiring. In other words, once they do get focused, if you try to get them to stop and start on something else, if they're little kids, a lot of times they'll throw a tantrum. They just get that brain to switch over is really hard. And so you need to give them a warning and some time to know in 10 minutes this is what's going to happen. Following instructions, waiting for their turn. Where does it show up in an adult? Employment issues, social and task-related challenges, financial troubles. Impulsive spending is definitely a problem with ADHD adults. And unpaid bills, organizing their bills. I mean, I have an ADHD daughter. I get late notices and collection stuff in the mail all the time for her. She's an ADHD adult now, but has such a hard time with that. Household routines and organization, academics and homework, conflict and distress in marriages, and social relationships. And it does affect all parts, all of these areas. What gets in the way? Well, think about an orchestra without a conductor or a football team without a coach. They're not going to perform very well because everybody's going to have an idea of what they want to do. Without good executive functioning, people with ADHD don't perform well. That frontal lobe of your brain is responsible for the executive functions of your life. And those executive functions are the following. These are 6 main ones, and of course there are many sub areas of each of these. Activation, organizing, prioritizing, and actually getting started on your work. If you have a car in the garage and it's going, but there's no spark plug or the battery's dead, you've heard that noise a lot of times, haven't you, with the dead battery. Is that car moving out of the garage? It's not moving. And it can make all the noise it wants, but it isn't going anywhere. So that equivalent to us is, gee, I know this project is important. I really need to get started on that. You know, I'm going to be in trouble if I don't get this homework done. You're making the noise, but your brain is not firing, and that's what gets you out of the garage. Focusing, sustaining, and shifting attention to tasks. Regulating alertness, sustaining effort, and processing speed. When an ADHD brain is not stimulated, it just goes kind of off into na-na land. You'll feel lethargic. And what you have to realize is that an ADHD brain is working twice as hard to accomplish what everybody else just gets done. Because, again, they're working against a brain. They're working in a car that doesn't have the electricity going through it. And so they have a hard time being alert. Emotional, managing frustration and modulating emotions. They feel it, it's exhibited. There's no screen. They don't have a very good screen on things. Memory, utilizing working memory and assessing recall. It's really hard for ADHD brain people to make decisions. When you go to make a decision, your brain goes through the filing cabinet and pulls out a whole bunch of past experiences, and then you have a criteria upon which to make a decision. Well, it's a challenge of memory. one of the main executive functions is memory. So when you have an experience, your brain doesn't register that you had it and all the details. So your brain goes to the filing cabinet to make a decision. There's nothing in there. So you don't have very much criteria. And it's like you're starting all over again. And that's such a subtle thing that you wouldn't know about. When they explained that to me, I went, no wonder. Action, monitoring and self-regulating action. So those are the executive functions. This part of your brain takes care of all of that. So what do you do with all of that? So what do you do? Treatment may include medication, ADHD coaching, social skills building, learning about ADHD, cognitive behavioral therapy, parent and child support groups. It is a complete lifestyle management. And it isn't a once and for all deal, because you may perform well at this time of your life in these areas, and a year down the road, you may have another variation of it. Medication, again, is usually a stimulant because, again, it stimulates your brain, and then those executive functions can go to work, and then you can calm down and be organized and be practical. I can't believe the difference when I have my medicine and when I don't. Now, it doesn't work for everybody, and it's not a cure-all, but at least it gets that part under control that you can take care of. ADHD coaching. Coaching is, and I gave you a sheet, the difference between a consultant, a therapist, a coach, and a parent. It's a very hands-on, plan-making kind of approach to treatment. Social skills, ADHD people and children don't pick up social cues a lot of times. And sometimes they can't stay focused. I can't tell you how many clients I've had say, my wife will be talking to me and I'll just get bored and I'll just walk away. And and you know what I'm thinking? Oh, it's not real good for marriage. Let me tell you. Let's see if we can get you stay there. But I've heard it more than once. So, and then cognitive behavioral therapy and parent and child support. Parent support is so important with children and young adults that have ADHD. So they don't say, don't you care about your grades? Yes, I care. It's not that I won't, I can't. And it's not an excuse, but it is definitely a reason. And so the responsibility comes in being willing to set in place structures and systems that will help you take care of these challenges. Self-care is it's important for all of us, but is it extremely important for people with ADHD? Exercise, as we all know, stimulates endorphins in our brain, in our system. That is such an important part. My son the other day said, when I exercise and I lift weights and run 40 minutes a day when he was in PT school, he said I could let go of my medication. But if I didn't, I was in trouble. Good sleeping habits is so important. Going to bed at the same time, meditation, a diet, what we eat is very important, and regular eating. So all of these things have a very clear influence on the success of an ADHD brain. Creating strategies for success. You've got to have structure. An ADHD person, the name of the game is structure, because they truly don't know how to do it. I can't do the same thing on the same day every week to save my soul unless it's an appointment. But you know, people say, well, on this day you wash, and on this day you do this. I think that sounds really like a great idea. I can't do it. But I have other systems in place that are important to me. So maintaining support systems. And the other thing is ADHD people have to not be afraid to ask for help. It's okay that you have somebody maybe help you organize your finances, or come in and have a home organizer, because their cupboards and closets are just spilling over. And it's frustrating. It's hard to run a home with that. So don't be, and so often they're ashamed. There's a lot of shame that goes with ADHD. And so they're trying to hide it from everybody, when really they just need to get some help. Often they are not finishing things. And so this one gal says every weekend her co-workers would say, well, what'd you do this weekend? She goes, oh, I just worked on getting organized. I just got organized. She says, after about a month of telling those people that every weekend, they go, man, you must be really doing a big project. And she's thinking, no, I'm just trying to stay afloat. I'm just trying to get done what I didn't get. Everybody else got done. I'm still working twice as long, staying up late hours, trying to get done what I didn't get to finish. And so again, you need to get somebody to help you. It can be as simple as learning how to use a planner, having a system for how you're going to pay bills. You know, there's so many wonderful apps on our telephones. There's fun ones. And that's another thing, a very important strategy, is it has to be fun. ADHD people, we all need to have fun, but they especially need to have fun. And if they can make a game, if you can help your child make a game out of his homework, or, you know, he can dance his way through it, or you can put on some great fun music and he can have that while he's doing his chores. And the other thing is if you don't start your day with your list, that's a sure way to shut your brain down. You start your day with a few minutes or something you love, whether it's call a friend, exercise, quilt for a while, play a video game, whatever. Not for all day, but for 20, 30 minutes. That will stimulate your brain, and then you run on that momentum. And then you've had some excitement and some enthusiasm. You come back to your list, and it's not near as much drudgery. You can get started on it. I have my teenage and my kids, they do video game for 15 minutes with an alarm. They go back, do 20 minutes of homework. Video game, homework. Video game, homework. And then they can get it done. Positive characteristics that take you to success. We've already gone over that. I don't know why they put that in here twice. These are all people that have been identified with ADHD. The CEO of JetBlue, Scott Iyer, Philip Manuel. I'm sure you recognize some of these people up here. So you can be successful. ADHD rocks. This is a bunch of kids that finally understood their ADHD and decided it was a great thing to have. I love this picture. What's the next step? If you're curious, if you have somebody you're trying to figure this out for, or yourself, take a test, get diagnosed, get treatment. Join support group, meet with other people with ADHD. That's really important because you'll just find everybody talking the same language, and it is such a relief and such a support for parents to hear that, for all of us to hear it. And in whatever you're doing, we all love to belong to somebody that understands us. Learn from other people with ADHD, find out new strategies, and become aware of your old strategies and beliefs that don't serve you well. And that's another really important part of treatment, is to establish and identify old belief systems that you've been hanging on to that are shutting your brain down. How are we doing on time, Tanya? We're good? I'd love to explain this to you real quick. Right back here in the back of your brain is the reticular activating system. Okay? It's like the gatekeeper, and it will let the strongest thought or emotion through the gate onto the brain. And because it's because it's the electricity that's going to make things run. So if you have negative thoughts and emotions from these belief systems, okay, the center of your brain, its job is to protect you. And it's called the amygdala. And it recognizes that strong anxiety or that negative thinking, or that upset kind of negative thinking. It recognizes that as danger. It doesn't it doesn't know whether it's good or bad. It's just strong, and it recognizes that kind of a thing as danger. So to protect you, it goes to fight, flight, or freeze. And it starts shutting down all the rest of your brain. The executive function never gets that thought or anything. So it can't decide what to do about it or make a good decision about it, because the amygdala starts shutting it all down. That's why with anxiety, you just can't think. Well, so it's really important, because often ADHD kids and adults, they're so busy trying to overcome their weaknesses. Every day they get up and go, today I'm going to get my list done. Today I'm going to be organized. Today and the stronger and longer and harder you focus on getting over your weaknesses, the worse they're going to get. because that's that negative tumbling in your brain. And so if you'll identify your strengths and build your day and your life on what you do well and get rid of some of this garbage, your executive function, your brain literally will function much better, and you'll start laying chemistry down around the good and the positive. And you'll find you have a much brighter, happier, more productive life. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? I think that's a great question for all of us. If you knew failure was not possible, it was going to be, you'd be a total success, what would you love to do? And that's what you have to do, especially with ADHD people. You have to get them to identify what's really important to them. And then they usually have to have a visual or music, something to keep the emotion connected. They have to have a really strong why. We all have to have a strong why, but a lot of times to get it done is our why, because we're human doings instead of human beings in our society, which unfortunately. And so, but just getting it done isn't going to stimulate or motivate an ADHD brain wiring. So they have to have a cause. They have to have something that's connected to their heart, to their soul, to what's really important to them. And then they have to have a way to remember it. Hello, they don't remember very well. And so they have to have a visual or music or something to keep it conscious up in front of them. And then there's not a greater bunch of people in the world because they are all heart. You can learn life skills and ADHD management strategies through working with an ADHD coach. I'm not going to go there. Resources to learn more about ADHD. What I have learned as I have gotten in this profession is the generosity and the how hard these people across the country will work just to help everybody know about it and to help somebody get a resource and to help somebody be successful. They are just awesome. So here's some websites that you can go to if you want to go to. CHAD is pretty well recognized, children and adults with ADHD. The ACO, ADHD Coaches Organization, that isn't going to, they're not going to try to get you to have a coach. You can find one there, but there's a lot of wonderful information there. ADA is one of the best resources. If you join ADA, I think it's $20 or $30 for the year. They have a webinar every week that is profound about ADHD, and you have access to all those recordings and all of the latest news research from the ADA website. Attitude Magazine, all of these are great. And they're all on my website too. There's a lot of resources there. Thank you for your attention.
We'll open the next 5 or 10 minutes up for questions, if anybody has questions for Renee.
Victoria.
Let me think how I want to word this. I mean, I agree that, people need to find ways to, you were talking about building on strengths, and that people should, do things that they do well, and I agree with that, but there are things that we all have to do in life, that whether we do them well or we don't do them well, we have to do them.
We do.
And so, so what are some of the things, practical things that you do daily or weekly for yourself or for others, or that you help in the coaching that you do? How do you help people kind of overcome that? I just don't want to. Because I have a child, I love her dearly, but Lord have mercy, she cannot put anything away to save her life, and I'm finding that what's happening is this, and she's creative, and I don't know if she's ADD because she doesn't really meet some of the criteria, but we're getting in this dynamic where she's experiences me, I'm on her case all the time. And I feel bad for her because she's a wonderful creative person, but at the same time I am a practical person, and I'm like, look, suck it up, make your bed. How many times do I need to tell her? I try to help her with lists and things like that. Oh, no, I don't want lists, that overwhelms me. Okay, and, so anyway, what are practical things
Well-
that we need to
How about a reward if she does it right? See, again, if at all possible, you come from the positive. And ADHD children and adults all have to have shorter term goals, okay, and reward. They have to have the reward more often and sooner. Wouldn't that be nice? For all of us, we'd all like that, wouldn't we? But it's true, because they can't sustain that effort. They can't sustain that. They don't, first of all, doesn't motivate them at all. I mean, it doesn't motivate a lot of us, but we can do it. But you have to remember, their brain, that's just that executive function down, okay? It's not stimulating it. So a reward will stimulate that brain. So that's kind of, so maybe if she does it right,
So give me an example of a reward that you would give a 13-year-old girl.
okay, so if she gets her bed made every day, let's see. Well, I don't know, ask her what a reward
Okay,
would be.
right now our little program is that she would get an allowance every week, and and keep trying to give her opportunities to earn that back, and
And see, yeah. Well, does she have, okay, what you need to do is sit down with her and say, what do you really want? Do you want this money? What could you buy with this money? What would this money get you? You have to get her focused on the end. Okay? So if that's really what you want, how do you think you're gonna get there? So you let her process that. So now the bed is connected to the money. You'd think that would be obvious, wouldn't you? But when she's trying to get out the door and when she's got 1,000 things racing around in her head, the discipline or the impulse control to make that bed is not important. All of a sudden, she can't stay focused on this down here. So you help her get really tied in somehow to this down here. And let her say, okay, so how are you going to remember that? What are you going to put up in your room? I just went to Office Max and they've got these great little round, shiny dots that you can put up on the wall. Some kind of a fun, make it fun. Some kind of a fun visual for her to remember. Because she wants the money. She wants what it's going to buy her. You have to help her remember that. Does that help?
yes.
I was gonna say, my daughter's creative too, and she loves to do crafts, and I don't ever like her to do crafts all the time because she always gets stuff out and never cleans it up, and it's over and over again. So what I did is, I told her, because we were having problems with her at school doing this, and so for her to stay focused at school, I said, her teacher's gonna let me know every week if she had a good week, and then if she gets a good week, she gets to pick a craft that I've already purchased from Michael's, like a $5 craft, because the money wasn't working for her, because it's too much, or she'll want candy in a while, and so she loses her focus on eating what she wanted. So if I already had the $3 or $4 craft from Michael's, and if she knew that was there,
Since
she's
she's
done
counter.
better. Yeah. So she's done better by having the craft already, knowing that it's right there and I can have it right there. There's no waiting till mom's available or home from work to go drive to the store to then get in the store and need to walk around. It's already there, and
That's a
she's
great
been
idea.
more motivated that way. So
Yeah, you could let her go buy what she wants with that money, but she doesn't get that until, so that's sitting on the counter so she can see it.
Yeah,
And then
that's
that's
what, that is perfect, because she just ran out of eyeliner.
Oh!
There you go. She has no money whatsoever.
There you go, so
And,
you can let her buy
and I
it.
keep trying to give her chances to get her allowance back, and she's like, so I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna take her eyeliner shopping, and I'll say, when you can keep your room clean for
Right
me,
there.
you can have your eyeliner. There we go.
Yeah, and it sounds like, why do we have to go to all this trouble?
No.
Guess
Yeah,
what, you
yeah,
do,
yeah,
you just do,
you just do,
because
right,
this
right.
brain doesn't work the whole, like everybody else's.
Our son was just diagnosed with ADHD and he started his medication this week. What my husband and I struggle with is how to explain what's going on with him to him in a way that he doesn't feel like there's something wrong.
He's broken.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think it's important that he understand his brain. I have this awesome poster of the brain in my office, and we just talk about it. We just talk about what's going on. This is an equipment challenge, not and if you don't want to use the word problem, it's a challenge. This is an equipment challenge. That doesn't mean you're broken. That just means your brain's wired different than mine. And your brain has to be organized, and you have to do things a certain way so that, because you're brilliant. These people are brilliant. As you saw, some of the most brilliant people and successful people we identified have this brain wiring. But I'm here to tell you, they've got a lot of support. They've got what they're, of course, as you get more money, you can pay somebody to do all the things you're not good at. Pay somebody to make your bed. But I would just, and if you're, first of all, you have to be okay with it.
That's
You-
been a struggle.
That's been trouble.
Because you're feeling a little bit like he's broken or like something's
No.
really wrong.
Not him, with her.
Oh, okay, that's okay, that's okay. Let me tell you that when somebody's diagnosed, they kind of go through a grieving time, they'll kind of go through a denial, they may go through a lot of things. And that's just kind of normal, but you have to not, you just have to identify what society is telling you and what society tells all of us, which is the longer your list, the more you get done, the more valuable you are. Well, I don't happen to believe that. I care more about the human being. I care more about your heart. I care more about what's important to you, what your purpose is, how you treat your mom, how you know what I mean? I think that's what's really important to all of us, our relationships. And a lot of times, that's what's really important to them too. And so, it's okay that their brain works different. It really is. Because feeling bad about it isn't going to make it different. So you might as well embrace it and see all those wonderful qualities. Because I'm here to tell you, most ADHD people are generous, are fun. Every mom and parent so far that I've dealt with just says, she's so great with people. Her teacher tells me how she's so sweet to the underdog. This guy's, handicapped, and she's always helping him. And that's awesome. You wouldn't trade that for anything. You can get the game list done. You know what I mean? You can figure out how to get these other things, this organization and prioritizing, and you can work with those. And so just if you can try to embrace that, and you will in your own time, then you can help him embrace it and be okay with it. Find a coach. And I'm not trying to plug my business or my personal business, but they are really helpful in that very theme. We can talk after. It's okay. Any other questions?